Hello, this is Matt Caddo, Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. I'm speaking to you today from Jakarta, Indonesia, albeit a bit jet-lagged, as a group of American scientists and kratom manufacturers are visiting Indonesia to meet with government officials here to help them understand better the American marketplace, how their policies can impact the quality and the access of kratom products from the raw materials that are supplied by Indonesia. We've started those sessions and they're going great, and we're hopeful that we can report back to you on some positive responses from the Indonesian government as they contemplate what they are trying to do in order to facilitate this marketplace while protecting their farmers here in Indonesia, something that we, of course, support. But the real purpose in my reaching out to you today is to talk about AB 2365, which is the California Kratom Bill that many of you may know was held by the Senate Appropriations Committee. In legislative parlance, that means it essentially kills this bill for the current session of the California legislature. The Los Angeles Times reported this bill's defeat, claiming it was amidst a battle of, quote, between of advocacy groups, unquote. I believe that what actually occurred is a battle between two radically different regulatory philosophies. The American Kratom Association has successfully lobbied in 13 states to do one important thing with our Kratom Consumer Protection Acts. We want to protect consumers with product standards for dietary and botanical supplements that the FDA should be implementing under existing federal laws if they were enforcing those laws for dietary and botanical supplements on Kratom. In short, we just hope that the FDA would do their job. But until they do so and set aside their pursuit on the war on kratom to ban it under the Controlled Substances Act, we think the states have to step in to fill that consumer protection gap. In the absence of FDA's appropriate regulatory enforcement, in those states where there are no regulation, the marketplace has become a Wild West. You see many adulterated kratom products freely being sold on the internet and on street corners in stores. Products that don't meet GMP standards required by the Food Drug and Cosmetic Act, and imposing standards that, without them, expose consumers to significant safety risks. We see products with inadequate or even no labeling instructions for use, including important warnings to inform consumers how they can responsibly use kratom. And we see there are no regulations whatsoever on potentially dangerous kratom product formulations of products that, in our opinion, shouldn't be called kratom at all. It is an important area for us to enforce regulations at the state level until the FDA decides to do their job. The American Kratom Association has sought to protect the legal access to kratom products and stop the FDA's attempts to ban it by allowing consumers to make informed choices on the use of kratom to maintain their health and well-being. The difference between the AK's regulatory philosophy and the one advocated by the trade group, the Global Kratom Coalition, is that their, and I'll call it an extreme regulatory framework, was embedded in AB 2365, and those philosophies are radically different. We believe that the decision by the California Senate Appropriations Committee to hold this bill was actually a victory for kratom consumers across America, and here's why. AB 2365 would essentially regulate kratom as a drug, or at least as close to a drug, or even a ban on most kratom products as you can get without adopting the FDA's goal to ban all kratom products. The cost of enforcing a drug-like regulatory scheme for kratom is substantial, and it's huge for any state agency to try to get their arms around to regulate. It requires the California Department of Public Health to hire a significant number of new staff members in order to enforce what the requirements are that are in AB 2365. They would have to pay for new office space, for equipment, for health care, and for pensions for that new staff. It embeds an enormous regulatory and cost burden on the department. They would have to hire an army of consultants to develop specific compliance rules required by the new law with the most onerous and complicated kratom bill ever conceived. The California Department of Health simply does not have the expertise to regulate products like drugs. That's the job of the FDA. So they have to reach out and hire all of these people, again, at considerable expense to the taxpayers or, more importantly, to kratom consumers. The American Kratom Association raised our specific objections to the main proponents of AB 2365, the Global Kratom Coalition, but they claimed that we really didn't understand what we were talking about. I've worked on legislation in the public advocacy space for more than 40 years, and I've lobbied legislatures and the federal government. And I have seen this exact mistake get replicated over and over again. When you anticipate that a bill, however well intentioned, is not going to cost very much, it ends up in reality ballooning. The Senate Appropriations Staff Committee report showed that this bill would have cost up to $5.9 million to implement in the first year, and then up to $4.1 million in following years. Remember, that has to be spread across about 50 kratom manufacturers, which is the population of compliant manufacturers in the United States today. The GKC told everyone, including the supporters of their legislation, the registration fees were going to be no more than $1,700 per manufacturer. That didn't pass muster under the Appropriations Committee analysis. $121,000 per manufacturer in the first year, $83,000 in the second year, and that's not even adjusting for inflation in the out years. Frankly, the estimate by the Global Kratom Coalition was wrong. I personally have no idea if it was just inexperience or what some are calling deliberate deception, but the reality is the cost to implement this bill would have been staggering. GKC is now arguing there is an alternative funding mechanism based on unit sales that was included in the bill. But that ignores the reality that whether you spread the cost across products and unit sales, you still have to get to the same number. And these manufacturers are simply going to have to do one thing, pass on the cost to you, or exit the marketplace, which is highly more likely under the way that this regimen was developed. That's why AB 2365 was killed in the California legislature. It was a good decision and requires us to go back to the drawing board. But here's the most important thing. If this bill had passed, the California kratom consumers would have seen the following results in the marketplace. There would have first been a dramatic reduction in the number of kratom products available to you on store shelves or on your internet sites to purchase. It would have put most small to mid-sized kratom companies, who many consumers have come to trust with their business, out of business. You would have seen huge price increases in the kratom products that were left to be available, both because of the huge registration fees, which have to be passed on from the manufacturers, but also because there would be fewer competitors in the marketplace, and competition drives prices down. Lack of competition drives prices up. And inevitably, you would see a substantial black market of kratom products where there are no regulations imposed on them simply because they're avoiding this onerous regulatory scheme. The American Kratom Association agrees completely with Assemblymember Haney that kratom needs to be regulated. We've demonstrated our commitment to that philosophy. We pledge to work with him and his colleagues on a new bill that mirrors an effective regulatory model that has been implemented and is working effectively in other states. We will not support a bill that will give an advantage to the big kratom manufacturers or even a single one, but rather we would promote policies that will give kratom consumers access to an array of kratom products that are safely manufactured and available in a competitive marketplace driven by safety and quality. I know that the Global Kratom Coalition is upset that their bill was defeated, and they're blaming the AK for hiring a lobbyist there to work against it, and for our advocacy program, which was obviously effective in informing legislators about the pitfalls of this bill. We make no apology for that. We did oppose this bill vigorously. We tried to work with the Global Kratom Coalition, but they shut the door on us. What was needed in the California legislature was to hear the truth about what AB 2365 would do. And when they heard it, the legislators themselves were convinced that it was not ready for prime time. The American Kratom Association has a solid record of defending consumers, including our demands for safe kratom products that are manufactured under FDA GMP standards, independently tested to make sure that they're safe, that they're not adulterated with dangerous substances added to them, and that they're not isolated or concentrated unsafely, that the products are properly labeled with good instructions for use, and that the products are age restricted. That's the regulatory standard that we believe is reflected both in the federal law and in the philosophy of the American Kratom Association to protect consumers. We pledge to continue in that effort. We will work to get more state KCPAs passed. We will work hard to get the California bill passed once it is properly written in order to truly protect consumers and not the interest of big manufacturers of kratom products. We hope that you will continue to join us in that effort. We're grateful for the support of the advocates who work with us tirelessly daily to make sure that these kinds of regulations are implemented properly, and we will continue to work to honor the trust you have put in us. Thank you so much.